raising kids and running things, the Boss
Yay.
Mom Blueprint. And I'm really excited to have a special guest, Corean Canty. She's an idea catalyst, TEDx speaker, and coach.
Yes.
Ooh, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Of course. So, other than what I mentioned, tell everyone who you are, why you are, all the things.
Yeah, so I spent 20 years in corporate, media, marketing, advertising, C-suite executive, all the things. I left corporate
Mhm.
a few years ago. Um, I have two businesses that I own now. One is a consultancy where we use play and improv, and we go into organizations and improve culture.
Mhm.
And the other is my coaching business, where I help executives, leaders, and founders find their voice, amplify their message. I'm an official TEDx speaker and coach, so I also coach TEDx speakers. And so my life is kind of revolves around, storytelling and ideas and how to use that to enhance our lives and our businesses. And I'm a mom of two.
Yes, that's why
Yeah,
we're here. How old are your
yeah.
children?
My daughter is 29 and my son is 22. So I've been a mom my entire life.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can definitely give some good advice here today because they are grown and out of the house, I would imagine.
Well, my son's back in. He decided he's in college, so he's back at home in this economy, um,
And then there's that.
figuring out figuring out how to live real life in this world right now. So it's a good thing that he can come back home and launch from home.
Yes.
Yeah,
Awesome. Sounds good. Definitely appreciate it. So, I mean, we're talking about raising kids and running things. My niche these days have been talking to the wife mom bosses, the mom bosses. We all out here doing things, that's for sure. And when we throw kids into the mix, it can be a little bit hard to balance
yes,
our lives because
yes,
I mean, we're owners and bosses and CEOs in our business, but we can at least sort of walk away from that,
mhm,
if you clock out or you can somehow be away from that at certain points. But as a
yeah.
mom, nah, not so much.
Not even when they're grown, right? So I was a mom before I was could legally vote. And so that's been my primary identity my whole life. And I do have a bonus daughter now
Mhm.
who's still in high school, but we don't have any little kids in the house, right? And so they are more self-sufficient, but you never stop being mom. I don't care how old the kids become. You never stop being mom. And I'm also at this interesting time in life where I've also become my mother's mother.
Oh,
And so
yes,
that's a
sandwich
whole other
generation.
part of the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, that can be a whole episode in and of itself, but that is certainly a battle. And I feel that way in a sense with my mom and mother-in-law because we help them, but they help us a lot. It's our village, so
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
kind of like a each other thing. But it can be hard if the mother is dependent on you. Is
Yes,
she sick? Are you pretty much her caregiver?
I am. I'm her caregiver, her and her partner. She has dementia and just a lot of other health ailments. And so, but the dementia is the hardest thing. I think nobody really prepares you for it. And
Yeah.
so, literally, it's like becoming your mother's mother. It's kind of sometimes feeling like you have a toddler who's lived a long life and doesn't want to do anything because they think they know, but they don't remember. So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, and, they say once a child, no, 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 once an adult, twice a child. Have you heard that
right.
phrase?
And it is so true. It's so true. Life comes full
Yeah.
circle.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so it's a matter of, like, how do we deal with that to be able to keep ourselves and prioritize ourselves when we're trying to be literally everything to everyone these days.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so while we're talking about that, can you share a bit of your journey in becoming a boss mom? And you can share however way you wish or think that question means.
Yeah, no, well, since I've been a mom my whole life, through my whole career, mom has always been the first thing for me, right? So I had to learn to navigate a career from the very beginning in a way that allowed me to create the life for my children that I wanted to create. And
Yeah.
so that also, I think, gave me a unique perspective in the corporate world because I ended up moving up the ladder pretty quickly because I had the best teams. And a lot of that was because I was very people centered, people first, because I needed to be, right? I had things I had to do. I didn't have anyone helping me with the kids. So I had to have environments that were flexible enough for me to be the mom and be the boss. And so I realized that we all have things in life that we need. So early on, I started to think about how do we integrate life and work? We call it making a living, but we forget about the living part, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how do we
Mm-hmm.
bring that back into making a living, which is what my leadership was anchored in. But I've realized that even through my whole career and doing my should career, right? Like you became a mom and now you got to go do this, climb the corporate ladder, get the 401k, do all the things.
Yeah.
Outside, I was always a builder and I was always what I would call like my side hustle or my mind. It was like, oh, I'm going to do this to pay for that tech camp or do these other things as a mom. But I realized once I took a break from corporate and started becoming my mom's caretaker and then decided to start two businesses, that it's always kind of been in me to start and build things and that I get enjoyment out of it. But
Oh, nice.
I also had to kind of learn how to not necessarily be mom first at this point as well.
Mm.
It's a new journey for me.
Yeah, to kind of put your career first or yourself first, sort of, right?
Yeah, like put Corean first, right? Because
Mm, good.
before Corean knew who Corean was, Corean had babies. And so it was like, oh, but now they're adults and they're living their own life. And you know how when your kids are smaller and you're trying to juggle all the things and you're constantly worried about, I'm not messing this up. Oh, I'm doing something wrong.
Mhm, mhm.
And all the times I knew I couldn't do all the things I wanted to necessarily do at home. And I would tell my kids, like, look, my job is to make you a self sufficient adult. So I'm doing the best that I can. Right.
Right.
And now that we're adults, I realize that, oh, all those times I was so afraid I was messing up, like we were learning together and they actually paid attention to what I did more than what I
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you got to
Yeah,
see
that's
like, oh,
true, for
oh,
sure.
they did listen to some things. Oh, that did sink in. Oh, they are doing better than me in these areas, right?
Makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool perspective, just being a mom first and then jumping into the career. And there's so many women who have that journey. And then for me, I just jumped right into the career. It was like all of my 20s was just all about I gotta get into med school, I gotta get into residency.
Mhm.
And then like while trying to tough that out, I got online. It was like, oh, let me try to find a man, let me try to find a husband and do all those things. But either way, I feel like it can be pretty stressful to try to just change your mindset of what you're prioritizing. Because I flipped a switch on, okay, I'm no longer prioritizing my career. Yes, I want to be the best doctor ever, but I
Mhm.
really want to focus on a family now. So it really
Mhm.
switched to let me focus on my husband, let me focus on the kids. And then at a certain point when I realized I'm done making kids now,
Mhm.
the career seemed to plateau, and then I said, "Well, let me start focusing back on the career," and then that's
Right.
when the podcast started, private practice open, and things like that. So, I mean, that's just the thing. Life changes as far as how you focus it.
Yeah, we have all these different seasons, but the one unfortunate truth is that regardless of your motherhood journey, we don't live in a society that's set up to support mothers and especially working mothers, right? Like
Mm.
we don't live in a society that makes it easy for us to follow this journey in a way that feels well for us and feels like we can do what we need to do for our family and home. It's always that constant battle of feeling like you have to show up more than everyone else and you have to
Yeah.
juggle all the things. And oh, by the way, go home and do the whole second shift because it is a full time job to be a mother and to have a home and to have a family, all the things, right?
Yeah, and for some reason, there's like this fulfillment in doing it all, even though we don't have to. But like my husband was out of the country for several days, and I really felt fulfilled. Like I got this, I'm
Yeah.
doing this, and
Hmm.
because I knew I had to kick up my self care routine because these kids they were gonna get to me, and I didn't want to be
Hmm.
yelling at them or anything. So I ran a 5K every single day. I made sure everything was prepared the night before for the next day. Being prepared and
Hmm.
structured and organized, way more organized than I ever have been. And it worked out. Nobody got
Right.
yelled at and things like that. No
Yeah.
stress. So it's like it felt fulfilling. But
Hmm.
that was a short-term thing. Of course, there's
Yeah.
moms out there that's their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I understand that. And I think part of the reason that was probably so fulfilling to you is because you had a tool belt, right? It took me a long time to build a tool belt to even recognize what real self care is and to
Yeah.
recognize that I have to fill my cup first because you can't
Point.
pour from an empty cup. I spent way too long pouring from empty cups to everybody else, not only for like being a mother and my kids, but like pouring into everybody at work because I was a leader, because I was an advocate for women leaders. And there was a point in my life where
Hmm.
all of that added up, got burnout, had a health crisis, and I started to recognize that, oh, even though I was trained in all these well-being modalities and I was using it on everybody else, and I was
Oh,
telling everyone else, rest, take your time
yes.
off. But I was the leader, so I felt like I always had to be there. But then I realized one of my team members was like, well, you realize you don't take any time off, or you're always
Hmm.
there. And if you're always available, we don't believe
Mm.
that we can as well. And when that hit me so
Ooh,
hard, like, oh, and then I learned to change it up and set my boundaries and take time off because I realized when you're in a leadership position, you
yeah.
give others permission to actually prioritize themselves in life if you lead from example, not from words or
I love
policies.
it. I love it. I see what they were saying and what you're saying because my CEO was on PTO 2 weeks ago. She said, "Okay, I'll be on PTO, so we're canceling this meeting." I was like, "How's she gonna be on PTO? She's a CEO." And I was like, "Wait, what am I talking about? That's great." But it
Hmm.
felt good. I was like, "She's off." It
Hmm.
just felt
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
I don't have that issue. I'll take off if I need to. But it was just some sense of like empowerment that she was gonna be on PTO that whole week too.
Right. Right. And too many of us as women who are leading companies, have our own companies, running companies, we don't hold the space for ourselves.
And we need to do that. So while we're
Mhm.
talking about this, as a boss mom, as you are, what's been the biggest challenge in balancing the leadership and work? And just being at home and being present at home, being present at work, leader at home, leader at work.
I think so. I was early on in my career, I worked at advertising agencies, which if anybody's worked at an advertising agency, you realize like there's not really set hours. So I remember back having to go pick my son up from daycare and I would take him back to the building, back to the advertising agency and have him work there with us. So he used to always be like, that place that always has the candy when he was little, because like everybody would come around and like feed him candy and stuff. And I used to think that was the hardest part, like having to take him back to work, until I started working fully remote, which I did way before the pandemic. I worked for fully
Nice.
remote companies. I led fully
Oh.
remote teams, but then the work is at home. And
Mhm.
at least when I left the office, I
Mhm.
didn't open my computer again, right? But when the work is at home, you really have to learn to be disciplined and to understand, because it's so easy to just open up your computer and be like, I'll just knock this out right now. I'll just stay on until 9 o'clock. I'll go eat and come right back. And you don't think about like, I actually need time away to even think. Am I even giving
Mhm.
my best ideas or doing my best work? Because our brains don't work 24 hours a day, right? We need to experience other things. We need to have other stimulation to be able to even create new ideas. And so learning how to, and I don't like the word balance. I think the thing that we really need to balance is our nervous systems. That's like
For
we
sure.
need to
Talk
learn
about
how
it
to
last week.
balance our nervous systems, because there's really no such thing as like work and life, right? When you say there's work life balance, it's such a fallacy, because you're saying there's things are separate and you can't
Yeah.
balance two things on a scale that are of the same. So work is a
Yeah.
part of life, and
Mhm.
there's many other parts of life, and it's just how do you understand a system that you can build for yourself, so when whatever piece of that pie needs to be the priority, it is the priority.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, finding the boundaries, like you said, with working
Yes.
from home, and I'll come in like and say, "Oh, let me look at my schedule real quick," and I'll log on, and then maybe an email might pop up. But I've gotten good at
Hmm.
making sure I close out the email so that the notification won't just pop up in my face. So then there's that thing too. But yeah, that creating that boundary in that space is definitely important. But then understanding, right? It's you're
Hmm.
you everywhere, so it's pretty much
Hmm.
meshed in. So I really hear you. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. Now, have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome along the way of being the boss lady that you are? And how did you push through? Do you experience it now?
Yeah, I don't experience it now because I look at it a little bit differently. I think we all go through some version of this. I don't necessarily know if I like the label at this point in life, right? But I think there's always a point where we feel like we're not enough, or we feel like we're
Yes.
inadequate, or we're comparing ourselves to someone else. And What
Mhm.
I realized and what I started coaching on is I think a part of that, especially in women, is we don't do a good job of keeping our own receipts and reminding ourselves of everything that we've done, right? And so
Ooh.
I constantly coach my clients, start to keep your receipts. And I really
Mm.
learned this lesson because when I worked in corporate, um, my boss, I kept advocating for the company to be like, we need to celebrate wins more. People need to celebrate their achievements. We need to pause. We need to, right? So I was advocating for the company, and he was one day finally like, okay, fine, I get it. What do you want to celebrate? And I was like, well, I did a lot of stuff.
Right.
Because we just do, right? Especially when you're a mom and you're working, you just do, you just do. And so I coach people like at the end of every week, take 5 minutes and write down the things that you achieved for
I
yourself, the
love
things that you
it.
want to celebrate. Because whether it's for your own confidence or you're trying to go for that promotion or you're trying to pitch and get some funding or you're trying to do whatever, we think we can recall the good, but our mind only remembers the bad stuff, right? We don't
Oh,
categorize all of the
that
great
part.
things we've done. So it's hard to like pop up a list. We can pop up a list of our mistakes real quick, but to pop up, we'll be like, oh, I knew I had that project. Oh, I knew I did something good. So keep your receipts, like have your own receipt jar, because when you're feeling that doubt, you can pull out the receipts and be like, you know what? I don't know why I'm feeling this way because I've done all of these things and it made a difference.
That's fantastic. So, do you have a nice little jar or you write it down? Where do you write it
I
down
do.
at?
I keep notes now. Like on my phone, I'm like whenever I think about something, I keep the notes in my phone. Um, it's
That's
just
really
it's just
cool.
important. I also have a joy jar, which I know you'll enjoy. I have a
Oh.
joy jar. So me and my partner, we keep a joy jar, and at the end of every week, we
Uh-huh.
put little notes in it of like what was the joy, our little joy of the week, and so that way, whether it's throughout the year or at the end of the year, we like dump it all out, just remember all the good things about the year, because in life that matters too,
Love
right?
it.
And especially right now with everything going on in the world, it can feel like there's no joy, and joy is an act of resistance, and so there's always
Mhm.
joy. Like duality is real. There can't be bad
Ooh.
stuff without good stuff. So if we take a moment to search for the joy and find the joy and remember the joy, then we create more of the joy in our lives.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now let's go back to what you just said. You said joy is an act of resistance. So say more of what that actually means.
So right now there's a lot of things that can make us fearful, hopeless, concerned, uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the easiest way for the people who are creating these environments to keep these environments are for us to let our nervous systems be under attack, to fall into the fear, because when we're in that state, we can't think critically, right?
Mhm.
And so just allowing ourselves to receive joy and to find joy in that moment is an act of resistance against whatever the BS is that's going on in the world, right? And it's okay to find joy. There are people who are in some of the worst conditions who still know how to tap in and find joy within themselves, even if they can't find it externally.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. So I needed you to go expand on that a little bit more because that's really all what I talk about. Resilience, resilience. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
experience challenges. Life is going to be life and trauma is going to be
Mm-hmm.
there to haunt you.
Mm-hmm.
But work, joy is work. And that
Yes.
resistance really clears up and tells you that, hey, it's going to take work because resistance is work. And when you
Yeah.
have resistance, I always use the analogy of the weights when you're in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
It feels hard, but you are
Yes.
growing from it, you're learning
Mm.
from it, and you're becoming better. So, oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, and the
I
one
love
thing I've learned now having adult children is if your children never experience you having joy, it will be hard for them to ever have joy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They won't give themselves permission to have joy. And that's what we want the most, right? We do all this work and we work so hard because we're trying to build these lives for our children and we're trying to, protect them, whatever we're trying to do to give them a good life, a joyful life. But if you never set an example that joy is important or that joy is a priority, they will never learn to prioritize it in their own lives.
They're watching us. They're
Yeah.
watching us. So, what are
Yeah.
some practical strategies that we can use to set boundaries between being boss mode and mom mode and not
Mhm.
having guilt? Because that mommy guilt is real. And
It
I'm
is.
sure we can have that boss guilt too if we're feeling like we're
Yes.
not doing what we should do.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's always a little bit of that. always, like, even when my children are grown now, sometimes like, oh, I
Yeah.
need to. I'm still like, actually, I don't need to do anything. But in my mind, like,
They
it's still
grown.
there. Like, they're grown, they got this. But the one thing that I learned to do without feeling guilty is create that time for myself, because it is setting an example for them. It is allowing me to be able to show up in all the areas of my life so that I can take care of myself, take care of them, take care of what I need to do, build what I want to build in the world, like create legacy. And the way I do that is what I call sacred brackets, which are the bookends of your day. Because even when you have small
Mm.
children, the two times that you can control are when you first open your eyes and right before you close them, no matter what. So
Hmm.
even if you can't find a long time,
Yeah.
you can take 5 or 10 minutes and lay in the bed. The baby can cry in the other room, it's fine.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
breathe, like breathe, relax,
Yeah.
read a page of that novel you've been wanting to read, write in your journal, like do something for yourself. Make sure you're filling your cup first before you pour into anyone else, even your children, which can be hard to do when they're really little. But
Yeah.
especially once like that age when they can make their own breakfast is like the biggest the biggest game changer
Oh yeah, my
in
13 year
life,
old. Yeah.
right? And some people will start to get their morning routine right, but then they forget that you have to come back to yourself at night.
Yeah.
And if you don't hold space, not only to set up the nighttime for good rest,
Uh-huh.
but to let go of everything that's not yours. And
Mm.
so finding a ritual where you can let go of the day, you can let go of whatever work guilt you had, whatever you didn't get done on that to-do list, whatever you thought you were supposed to, like all the things that we lay in bed and stay up at night trying to check the boxes, like
Hmm.
finding a way to dump it, get it out, come back to yourself and do something else for yourself before you go to bed. Because if you get those sacred brackets right, it makes whatever happens in the middle a whole lot easier.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And you mentioned filling your cup first, and sometimes filling your cup first could be at night because whatever you do at night is helping for the
Mhm,
next day. Because I've
mhm,
recognized that doing my running on the treadmill at nighttime definitely sets me up for a really good day
mhm.
in the next day. So yeah, that's some good stuff. When it's quiet, everybody's asleep or they at
Mhm.
school, it definitely
Yeah.
works. So, any additional advice that you have for moms that just feel like they're constantly dropping the ball? You did mention earlier, not feeling like they're enough. I know I've had some moments where I just like, I'm doing so much and I know I'm great, but then
Mhm.
even I'll feel like I'm just not enough. Maybe it's something
Yeah.
someone said, but then my mind messes with me.
Yeah.
What's happened for you personally, or any advice?
Well, the first thing I always recommend is first let's just breathe. Let's take a breath because our breath is our greatest tool and it's free and it will help us reset in the moment, regardless of what we're feeling. But I think the greatest lesson I've learned from becoming a caretaker to my mother is that there is a such thing as too late.
Mm,
So I'm witnessing real life end of life regrets. I'm witnessing
mm,
that it's never too late to dream, but it can be too late to do. Like her brain and her body, there's things she's just can no longer do, and she won't be able to do
mm,
in this lifetime. And so witnessing that reminds
mhm.
me even more to just remember what's important when we're
Yeah.
trying to juggle all the balls. Remember, some of them are rubber and some of them are glass. Just don't drop the glass ones. The rubber ones can bounce. You can pick them up later. So getting very clear on like what's really important and why are you doing all this in the first place and prioritizing that and
Correct.
then redesigning your life around that and not the shoulds and not what society
Mhm.
tells you you should be striving for, but like what you really want your life to look like and how you want to live in your days helps you to feel a little bit better about those days when you feel like I'm dropping the ball on everything and I can't be. Let me just breathe and remember what's important. And being here present in this moment with people that I love is usually top of the list.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. That's a segue into what I was thinking about when you were talking. When I left my last job, because I thought that was my dream job, and then now I feel like I'm living my dream job. So that's interesting. But
Mhm.
when I left it, I spoke to someone, and they says, "Well, you're replaceable at work. Don't feel bad for leaving. Don't feel guilty for like
Right.
anybody you feel like you left with the work that you left them with because you left." But you're not replaceable for and your family. So you have to
Right.
think about your family first. But what I was
Right.
thinking about when you were talking is that, for those of us, you've got your own business. I've got
Mhm.
my own business. We kind of are not replaceable in our own businesses. Well, what do you feel? Well, how, yeah. So tell me what you think about that statement when it comes to our own thing, which is why we feel like we have to do it all. We have to be present all the time.
Mhm. What I've learned in that is even more so because this is on me, I have to take care of myself because if I go down, like there's not a
Yeah.
team to back it up, right? And so,
Yeah.
but that also means I get to set my own schedule. So if I'm doing going
True.
too hard and I'm then let me oh well I'm going to clear my calendar for the rest of the day and take an afternoon. And so it's learning to listen to your body
Yep.
because there's some days I feel good and I might work all day and it's because I choose to.
Yeah.
And that's the freedom of having your own business is it doesn't mean now you're going to work 1 to 5 every day and like live this like some people have it set up that way, something's good for them. But there's going to be long days, there's going to be short days, but you get to choose. And if you tune in and listen to your body, and when you start to get those whispers, because we get them, listen to them before they roar, then it's easier to navigate that because you know, and if you recognize, yeah, now I'm irreplaceable in both. So that means I have to take
See.
care of myself the most.
Yeah.
And that means that sometimes I have to shut them both down and just focus on me.
That's good. That's good because you need to be the most fulfilled and strong for you in order to even be those things, to be
Yes.
the best mom, to be the best boss ever. So, some good stuff. Now, is there one mindset shift that every boss mom needs to embrace to thrive in both parenting and leadership?
That putting yourself first is actually the flex. Like too often we're putting ourselves last in both arenas, right? We're doing everything for everyone else, everything our clients, our teams, our business, our home, our family, and everything. And then we have nothing left for ourselves. And that's what leads to all the things we've been talking about, not even being able to show up and all the chips fall. So like putting yourself first and learning how to be selfish. And selfish is not a bad word, right? It's
There it
thinking
is.
about ourselves and what we need allows us to show up best in both places.
That's good. Learn how to be selfish because self care isn't selfish.
Right.
So we have to be selfish with our self care in order to be selfless and be there for everybody else.
Yes,
And this is
exactly.
everything that we're always talking about here on Journey to Joy Live for sure. Now, what's your self care routine? Do you have a particular routine? Does it depend on what's going on? What's your go to?
So I've gotten to the point where I give myself at least 2 hours in the morning. This just for me.
Oh, do you
It
wake up
doesn't.
early?
I try. I try to. In the wintertime, it's not as easy because I don't like when it's cold and dark and you don't want to get under the covers. In the summertime, it's much easier. It's
Exactly.
much easier. But I do like to get up early. I try to get up between 6 and 7, and I like to have time for me. And I don't. I'm not rigid because when you're too rigid, then it becomes yet another thing where you feel like you might fail, right?
Oh,
So if you're
okay.
too rigid, like I have to do these
Flexible.
5 things, like I have to get up and I have to work out and I have to do these. And if you don't feel like it that morning, then you feel like you failed something else. And so it's really more about that
Mm.
time and me not letting people take it. And so I have time in the morning and time in the evening. That's just for me. And that's like my primary everyday self care. And then I make sure I get outside in nature and I take walks and I get the sun on my skin and I pause and I look at like right now it's spring and I love it because my partner's like, you're gonna go outside and look at every flower and every tree and every but like that's how I recharge, right? Let me be present in the moment. Let me not look at my phone. What's the point of going out and taking a walk and looking at my phone? It's like let me actually get this good energy that nature has for me that's designed to recharge me and to heal me and to fill me up and just allow myself to be present in the moment as much as I can.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. All right. Well, is there any other nuggets that you were hoping to tell the audience here tonight about being a boss mom?
I think it's make sure that you're defining success on your own terms. Make
Your
sure you're
own
not
terms.
striving for something someone told you success looks like and what your life should look like and what your motherhood journey should look like. Like define it on your own terms. I think that's most important.
On your own terms, and I like that because that made me think of, when you look at other moms and what they're doing, some moms are pretty strict on things like, "Oh, I don't do screen time with my kids,"
Mhm.
or "I don't let them run in the mud," or whatever
Mhm.
they might be. That doesn't mean you have to be that way. If it
Right.
works out for you to give your kid a device or a tablet or let them run in the mud or let them spill their food everywhere because you're going to clean it up anyway, so just let them
Mhm.
be messy. Whatever the case is, that's your mom journey. That's their mom journey over there.
Mhm.
So I really love that. Just finding success on your own terms. And that's what makes me feel better because I don't compare it to what other moms are doing. I'm like, cool, that's what you want to
Mhm.
do you, I do me.
Mhm. Mhm. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I'll share one last little nugget,
Mhm. Yeah.
because I did for a long time because became a mother so early, think I messed up a lot of stuff, right? And because
Mm.
my children had to be self-sufficient in areas early on. Like my son,
Yeah.
he was like, "You can do laundry at 9, you're doing your own laundry. Like you have to learn how to
Nice.
do these things
Yeah.
just so we can all like pitch in together." We were a unit. And so it's interesting now that like he just graduated from college and we were talking the other day and he's like, "Mom, there's so many of my friends who don't know how to do things for themselves or figure things out." And so
Oh.
now he recognizes all those times when he was little. He'd be like, "Well, Mom, you could just tell me because I know you know how." And my number one thing was like, "You got to look it up, figure it out first, and then come to me." Like I wanted him to learn that, and now he's seeing how that paid off. And so those little nuggets and those ways that you realize we got to make
Oh.
life work for us actually helps our children recognize how life works for them.
That's so cool that your kids are at the age where you finally get that feedback of, "You did a
Yes.
great job, mom. Thank you. Now I get it."
Mhm.
Because you have to
Right.
wait till they're a certain age before they do
Right,
that.
because there's all those stages of they have full resistance, right? Full resistance, rebellion, revolution. They go through it, and you're just like, "Oh, is this ever going to end?"
Oh my gosh.
And then you get to go on adult vacations, and it's a whole new world.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 days ago, because I always drive right out of the school,
Mhm.
and, oh, I drove left. Big mistake. My four-year-old screamed for 25 minutes straight. He said, "You went the wrong way. Turn around, turn around." I'm just
Oh
like,
no.
"How do you even know I'm going the wrong way?" And then I got off the freeway because the GPS, called for it, and he
Mhm.
just still didn't like it. He said, "You need to turn around. You are going the wrong way." And luckily, I had my workout in, like, the day before, so
Mhm.
I was cool. I was calm. I'm like, "You have everything you need. Go ahead and scream if you need to. I'm just gonna do what I need to do." But it's like I wish I could have him say, "Oh, mom, I appreciate you being so patient and being able to hold it together, and you are so amazing." He says that
One
when I
day.
give him things that he wants, but
Yeah, yeah.
it gets tough.
One day it'll pay off.
But the next day was great. I had his blanket because that was the one thing he, screamed for. "I want a
Mhm.
blanket." I'm like, "There's no blanket in the car." And then he screamed for 10 minutes about a blanket. I had a blanket the next day. I had snacks the
Mhm.
next day. I had all the things. Everything went great. "Mommy,
Yeah.
you're my best friend." So I guess that's the feedback.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right. Well, yeah. So parenting is both a stressor and a joy. I say that all the time, but it can
Mhm.
be more of a joy than a stressor as long as you listen to your body, learn to be selfish, fill your cup, resist in that
Yeah.
joy, and all the things that we talked about. I really appreciate you coming on. Of course, I ask all of my guests because you're on Journey to Joy Live, what your personal journey to joy has been like.
It's been great. I think I love having these conversations. I love helping women recognize that we deserve to live too, right? We deserve to live too, regardless of who is depending on us, who we're responsible for. We
Mhm.
also should live big, full lives.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.